Hi everyone, welcome to another Fasting Work Girl Chat. This is just a brief Q&A tonight just because there were some questions left over from last week that I didn't get a chance to get to. And then some other people messaged me this week asking if they could ask different questions. So hopefully people will join and ask away. If not, I do have the questions from last week that I'll go over. And just as a reminder for everyone, obviously the stuff we discuss here is for informational purposes only. I'm not your physician, so this is not construed as personalized medical advice because I don't have access to your medical records and I don't know your personal situation. So with that said, I see we have a few people hopping on. If at any time during tonight you do have questions about intermittent fasting or just general health related questions, I will take my best stab at it and answer. And if I don't know the answer, I'll just say I don't know because no one knows everything. So getting to some questions that were asked earlier, the first question had to do about ketone levels. And I thought this was an interesting question because for people following a low carb or ketogenic lifestyle, ketones often sometimes become the central focus rather than the overall health benefits. There are lots of products now aimed at increasing ketone levels, like exogenous ketones. I'm not a fan of exogenous ketones, which I'm sure if you've been following me for now, for some time, I'm just not a fan of products in general unless you are specifically supplementing for a certain need. So all of these different extracts and things that promise more energy and all these different things, if you're intermittent fasting and saving the money from intermittent fasting to purchase high quality foods, whether you are plant-based, keto, carnivore, whatever, purchasing whole real foods, I think that you can get the majority of your nutrition through your diet because food is medicine. So in terms of ketone levels, there is a person on Instagram. If you're not already following her and listening to her podcast, I would highly recommend it. It's called, she is a ketogenic girl, and she has a podcast on iTunes called Fast Keto, where she talks about mainly keto, but also a little bit about intermittent fasting. And the biggest takeaway from what I've read, and then also listening to her, because she has a wealth of knowledge, is that your absolute ketone levels don't matter. And this is, again, if you are tracking ketone levels. You certainly don't have to track ketone levels to achieve health. But if you are tracking ketone levels, the biggest thing is not the absolute number. Now, if you have a specific medical condition, because people sometimes gloss over the fact that ketogenic lifestyle actually is the treatment for several diseases, and we have evidence to support this. Neurologists have known this for a very long time, used in the treatment for seizure disorders, epilepsy, especially refractory to medications. At that point, they will recommend, depending on the neurologist, but a lot of neurologists will recommend potentially a low carb or ketogenic lifestyle. So at that point, there becomes something called the glucose ketone index, which is basically a ratio that compares your glucose to your ketone levels. And for people who have a specific medical condition, also, if you're using that in the implementation of cancer and using that as an approach to your chemotherapy or radiation in conjunction to enhance results, you then will be targeting deeper levels of ketosis because that would be for specific therapeutic approaches. However, for weight loss and just overall health, we, at least at this point, to my knowledge, while other people may say they feel better if their ketone levels are between X and Z or whatever, it's you higher ketone levels do not mean that you are going to lose weight more rapidly. Especially after you've been keto for a while, your body actually starts to preferentially use ketones as fuel. And so you'll possibly notice lower ketone levels from the fact that your body is becoming more efficient at using them. So a lot of people who are using just the urine dipstick notice over time they're, following a clean lifestyle, low carb, and their ketone levels seem to be dropping by the dip analysis. But that's because the body is uptaking them, and so you're not wasting as much in your urine. You're actually using those more efficiently for fuel. So, and then that gets back to the point about exogenous ketones, where if you are taking in a supplement of ketones and your body's not producing them, your body's going to run off of the exogenous ketones before it actually burns your own fat. So if your point is you're doing keto for fat loss, then you need to access your own fat stores and make your own ketone bodies naturally. So I don't necessarily encourage people to get caught up on the absolute number. I think, make your diet, improve it, track your macros according to you. Everyone can stay in ketosis, again, if that is your goal. That does not have to be your goal. Remember, on my website and on my Instagram channel, we embrace multiple ways of lifestyle medicine. So while I may be and just naturally tend to be a more low carb yet plant-based person at the same time, that's not to say that if you are vegan or vegetarian that I don't think you can lose weight because you're not keto. Or if you're keto or low carb, I think you're going to die because you eat animals. No, there are multiple ways to achieve health, and we have research that actually supports multiple ways as long as they're not processed. And so, in short, I consider exogenous ketones processed. And so I personally wouldn't recommend using them. I think you're wasting your money. And if you have a little extra adipose tissue, you can make all the ketones that you need. So that's a long-winded answer to that, but that's why you can see ketone levels fluctuate. And I don't necessarily recommend exogenous ketones. So the next question that I had, and guys, again, like I said, if you have questions, feel free to submit them as you come up with them. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going through the questions people submitted previously. But if anyone viewing does have a question, I will stop and answer your question. So the next question we had was just for me, I guess they're all for me, but about my fasting schedule. And so, the question was, how long do I fast and what's my typical regimen like? So usually I would say most days I do anywhere from 16 to 21 hours, sometimes shorter, sometimes longer. Once a month I will do a longer fast. I do like to do a 48-hour fast, water fast, once a month, more for autophagy and just detoxing, because I feel like you don't necessarily need detox teas. We have an organ called the liver. It's the ultimate detoxer. So if you stop giving your liver other things that it has to process, then it will focus on processing the natural kind of crud that you've collected over time, and it can do that pretty efficiently. So again, I don't really think that you need to pay for different detox teas. Our body was designed very intelligently and has the ability to do all of that if we just stop and give it a break. So what my 16 to 21 hour fast usually looks like is I try to keep my eating window earlier. So before, when I first started fasting, my eating window was probably like 12 to 8 p.m. because that's the, I think, most popular method that you see on Instagram and, just different places, and you just want to try it and jump right into it. And over time, except in the summer when I'm like out gardening and eating from the garden as I'm gardening in the summer when it doesn't get dark until 9, I know, I learned, well, I shouldn't say I learned, right? I always knew that there was a circadian rhythm, at least since physiology class, but I guess I never really implemented that into my life and making sure I didn't eat past, night and things like that. So now I try to cut my eating off by nighttime. Ideally, I would like to cut it off by 6 p.m. That just doesn't always happen, especially not that the days are getting longer. I give myself a little bit of leeway, and as long as the sun is still up, if I'm hungry, I'll eat. Otherwise, as soon as that sun starts to set, then I shut it down and then pick it back up the next day. Another question that people asked were basically about fasting aids. And I did a post on this earlier this week, but fasting aids are okay. It just depends on what is the fasting aid and what is the purpose of your fast. So there are starting to become more like fast mimicking diets and things where it seems to suggest that you can trigger autophagy in other ways. And just full disclaimer, autophagy is a very complicated process, which is basically cell recycling, basically autophagy means to auto-eat. And so it's the body's process of recycling damaged proteins, damaged material, so that it can clear that out of the way and make new healthy cells. So there are multiple ways to activate autophagy. And we know that fasting, pure water only fasting without any substrates, is a great way to activate autophagy, but there are other ways as well. And so, we just have to do more research on it. Like I said, I'm becoming more familiar with all of the different ways. But if you are fasting specifically for autophagy, then that would be a water only fast without added substrates. If you're fasting for overall health benefits, you don't have to do a pure water fast just to get the health benefits. So that's when your green teas are going to come in, your herbal teas, your black coffee. Now, granted, there are times when I just, I don't feel like black coffee and I'll add a little bit of heavy cream. So I think that's okay every once in a while. And especially as you start, you may need that crux as you dial it back. But eventually you should be getting to either just plain herbal tea, bone broth, or vegetable broth, or black coffee in water during your fasting period. I don't recommend Diet Coke. I don't recommend caloric sweetened beverages. No, because that's still going to have a chemical that your body's going to need to process. So we're trying to get as natural as possible to get the full benefits of your fast. So we have a question from Irene J. Riley. And she says, I've been considering a regimen of fasting the first 7 days of every month and then intermittent fasting for 36 to 38 hours 3 times a week. Thoughts on that schedule? So I guess my first question would be, have you ever fasted that long before? So have you ever done a 7-day fast? So if the answer is no, then, certainly there are people who do 7-day fast, but I don't know that I would recommend jumping into that. The other question I would have is, has your medical professional provider checked your electrolytes? Just, again, at a baseline, just to establish that, just to establish that you don't have any underlying conditions that are predispose you to either electrolyte abnormalities or anything like that. So that would be my first question. A regimen that has been shown for most people, assuming you don't have medical conditions, that is starting to get more publicity with research actually backing it, would be your plan of the 36 to 38 hours 3 times a week, which is known as alternate day fasting. So alternate day fasting is basically what it sounds like. It involves eating one day, not the next, and then eating the following day. So you alternate the days, which ends up being anywhere from a 30 to 42 hour, fasting period. That's something that has been shown to have really good results. It also carries less risk than a prolonged fast. And then also you can still tap into autophagy, particularly if it's a pure water fast, keeping up on your salt. So I'm not saying, that an extended fast isn't okay to do, but I also think that extended fast meaning like a 7-day fast, but I also think that you could probably get many of those same benefits with that instead of doing 7 days consecutively by doing 3 alternate day fast. You know what I mean? Because overall the total fasting time is going to be near the same. So that might be something to consider. Now, we have a comment that says, autophagy is happening all the time in your body. Your body begins to break down old proteins and create new ones in this process. Some of the best ways to kickstart autophagy would be fasting, exercise, and protein restriction. Anything that signals your body to turn over protein. Oh, okay. So that is very helpful. And like I said, I'm still getting new to the autophagy space. I'm pretty much just familiar with autophagy in the terms of fasting. But in terms of activating mTOR, there's a lot of different processes. So that's good to know that exercise and protein restriction can do that. And actually, just thinking about it, right, that does make sense because we do note that exercise carries health benefits regardless of weight loss or not, right? So a lot of people are like, I'm exercising to lose weight. And I'm like, no, you're not exercising to lose weight because you can lose weight without exercising. You're exercising for overall health. And so that would make sense that exercise can trigger autophagy. So thank you so much. And I will have to look more into that. And then Irene, I hope that answers your question a little bit more about the fasting and just different protocols or different regimens that you can do. So then the next question I had was, or that someone had for me, had to do with best fasting regimens for weight loss. And the thing is, I don't know that we have enough research yet to say that X regimen is better than the other. So I can kind of, regurgitate for you some of the stuff from the IDM program. If you're unfamiliar with the IDM program, that's Jason Fung and Megan Ramos's institute that they started in Toronto, Canada, where Jason Fung is a nephrologist turned weight loss extraordinaire and intermittent fasting expert, where they actually prescribe different regimens. Now, obviously, there have been people all over the world implementing intermittent fasting for therapeutic purposes long before Dr. Fung. However, I think Dr. Fung has brought this practice into more mainstream to where we're all talking about it, depending where you're at. So they end up, it just depends. And basically what he notes is that shorter fasts, so like the intermittent when you're doing, either 1 meal a day or, 16-8, 18-6 versus alternate day fasting versus maybe a couple 72 hours, whatever you're doing. So you may notice more rapid weight loss with the extended fasting initially, but consistency over time is going to get everyone pretty much to their same goal. So you definitely don't need to feel like you have to do at least a 48 to 72 hour fast every day of the week in order to lose weight or have health benefits, right? So with the research that we have seen from Ramadan participants, fasting as short as 12 hours improves metabolic profiles, LDL, HDL markers, and people have noted weight loss. So I think what you need to do is whatever is safest and most realistic for you as well, right? Like you don't want to set yourself up for failure. Fasting is a muscle, and so you have to build that over time. You don't want to set off the first time you've ever fasted and say, okay, well, I'm going to do a 96-hour fast, and you've never went more than 3 hours in your life without eating. You're probably not going to make 96 hours, and you're probably going to be miserable the whole time, and then you're never going to fast again. So I would say that, start off with 12 hours. If you find 12 hours is pretty easy for you, then do 16 or do 18 hours. There's the warrior fast where it's like 21 to 24 hours. And then if you want to try alternate day fasting a couple times a week, or once a week, and then do 16/8 the rest of the time, mix it up. But you just got to play around with what works best for you and your body. And then remember, fasting is not the only component. So I know there's this slogan, delay, don't deny, but yeah, you have to deny. And the thing is, don't look at it as denial. Look at it as your body's going to perform how you fuel it. So if you have a nice BMW or Maybach and you put in the cheapest gas possible, that is going to not have your car run well, right? So you want to put that good fuel and that good oil in that Benz, right? If you drive a Benz. So that is the same way as your body. I would say your body is more precious than any Benz that you could purchase. So why would you continuously put in poor quality fuel into your more than expensive Benz body? I mean, right? So that wouldn't make sense. So it's not about denying, it's about optimization. And yeah, every once in a while, you're going to drive around and you're not going to be able to get that premium gas because whatever happened, there was a storm, whatever. And that's okay because it's a once in a while thing. It's not all the time. Same thing. Your body's not going to break down because you once in a while had a piece of whatever. But the problem is if it's an every week thing, even, cheat meals every week, that's still too constant. So I would just encourage that, to look at your body as being more priceless than the automobile that you'll spend tons of money keeping up. Okay, there were some comments and I just scrolling back. Okay, so Medicine for Two asked, I'm curious to know where your favorite places are to find research that support these ideas and whatever else we may be interested. PubMed always comes to mind, but any others? And suggestion. Google Scholars, I agree with life there. So Google Scholars, they said search for intermittent fasting and caloric restriction. And their app also has a lot of good articles. So, they're completely right there. Their app and their blog site does summarize and provide links for articles on intermittent fasting. I use PubMed, and then if I can't find on PubMed the article I'm looking for, I look for Google Scholar is usually the first place I go to. And then I have a couple other sites bookmarked, which I don't have the URLs memorized, I'll be honest. They're like on my laptop. So what I'll do is I will post those in the stories, or I can just DM you those. But there are a couple other free websites beside Google Scholars that helps gain access to references that may be that you can get for free that PubMed would require you to pay for. So those are my suggestions. Camasifer, I don't think I said that right, said, so tomorrow my plans are to do a 48-hour of only low-carb protein shakes and water, 3 protein shakes a day and a gallon of water, Last week I did 24 hours long and my workout regimen felt great. So that is, a perfectly sound regimen. That is different than intermittent fasting. So basically what you're doing is something called a very low calorie diet. The abbreviation people will use for that is VCLD. I'm assuming that over that I know you're doing 48 hours, but over the 24-hour period, I'm assuming that those protein shakes probably total to a caloric content of 800 calories or even less than that. And so that, while the protein in the shake and the sugar component, because even though, it's low carb, there's still going to be sugar in that protein shake. That's not going to necessarily be considered fasting. There are definitely benefits to short-term, very low-calorie diets. The thing you have to be careful with with any regimen, right? With the very low-calorie diet, though, is that over time, that seems to show greater adaptation. The body is able to adapt more to where your body's set point is going to eventually start to resist weight loss, even though it's going to do it very quickly at the beginning. And so then you may notice rebound, especially as you introduce regular eating again. So intermittent fasting, because that seems to alter insulin sensitivity to a greater degree and probably longer term, tends to provide more long-lasting results. So there are multiple approaches to losing weight. It's just that the regimen you're describing would be more of a very low calorie diet as opposed to intermittent fasting. Cursive Curl says, love your page and all the information you give. Oh, thank you. That's so nice. I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. And Medicine for Two said, awesome. I really appreciate it. Okay. And Medicine for Two, if I don't do it in a couple days, just DM me and remind me. Let's see. Irene Jelly said, thank you for your answer. I've been doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday intermittent fasting for a year and found, for weight loss, but found the last few days I've had a huge reduction in chronic pain. Wanting to do longer fasts to experiment with pain. Okay, so you said you had a year, but found on fast days I have a huge reduction in chronic pain. Oh, I get it. So wanting to do longer fast experiment with pain. Okay, so people definitely do longer water-only fasts for pain. And for autoimmune conditions and just lots of self-healing things. So it sounds like you are already pretty versed at intermittent fasting with alternate days. So obviously, again, you have to check with your healthcare provider. But I think a longer fast for autophagy definitely may help get at some of those issues potentially. And then you also said, I eat mostly plant-based to lower inflammation, but food seeds to equal pain, such as fibromyalgia. Yeah, and there definitely is. So I don't know if you've ever thought of trying what we call an elimination diet. And so basically, because there are certain plants also, so I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Stephen Gundry's work, and he has a book called The Plant Paradox. If you haven't read that, I always say pick it up on Audible because you can listen to it while you drive and just maximize your time. But there's a book called The Plant Paradox by Stephen Gundry. He was still is, but world-renowned cardiothoracic surgeon turned lifestyle medicine through his research. Pretty phenomenal. Some of the work that he does, and he actually suggests that certain plant groups like nightshade family can induce inflammation in some people who have sensitivities. So the other thing you may want to try with intermittent fasting, especially if you do an extended fast, is that when you reintroduce food, maybe try a 2 to 3 week period of an elimination diet. So I don't know if you eat meat or not, but there are many different ways to do an elimination diet. But what a lot of people will do is they'll start like strictly carnivore, which is hard to do. I mean, I tried carnivore and I think I did it for like 2 days and I was like, yeah, I can't do it. But some people thrive on it and can do it for a while. I started craving Brussels sprouts for some reason. But you would try just eating, a certain, basically meat, clean meat, for following after your fast and seeing if you have pain. And then if you don't have pain, then every 2 to 3 days, you would reintroduce a different food, but just one at a time so you can monitor what your body does to each food that you reintroduce. And you need to keep a journal and then see how your body responds. And then if you notice, okay, well, I was fine on eggs and steak and also broccoli. And then, 2 weeks out, I introduced tomatoes and, I started hurting. Then you probably need to try to start to eliminate tomatoes from your diet. So that would be something you could always look into more, but Dr. Gundry is a good one to look at for more information on elimination diets. And again, you can also do that with plants. So you don't have to do that with meat. I'm just saying the most common protocol that I've seen has involved basically going carnivore for a little bit and then reintroducing new foods one at a time every 2 to 3 days. But if you already know that you thrive on, let's say legumes, because you want to get some protein in. So I don't want you just eating lettuce. But if you wanted to do like legumes and kale for a few days after you break your prolonged fast, and if you already know those don't cause fibromyalgia pain, and then experiment with it, adding a different food. So that's, something you can talk over with your doctor or look up more information about that. So, hey guys, you had a lot of great questions. And thank you so much for tuning in. So this was kind of, like I said, impromptu, just because we did have a lot of questions from last week that I wasn't able to get to, and more questions came up during the week. And so it's just easier for me to answer questions in this format because, one, obviously I still have a job that I have to go to and provide stellar care. So I do that first and foremost. And so I can't stay on Instagram, answering DMs for 3 or 4 hours a day, right? Because I need to keep up on my medical literature. So what this does is doing Q&As basically allows me to go through the questions and just answer them in this format, as many as I can get to, and hope that many people had similar questions. So, and thank you, Irene, for your comment. Perfect. Thank you so much. We'll look into all of this. You're wonderful. Oh, thank you. I just want to spread information and show people that lifestyle medicine and food as medicine is a real thing, that we can all take control of our health. So next week, we are going to have Dr. Lifestyle 101. They are a husband and wife team who basically are now plant-based. So for all my plant-based, vegetarian, vegan, etc. people, or even my low carb keto people, because remember, I still like low carb, but I like to add my plants in too. They are going to talk about how they use a plant-based diet to reverse, most, I think actually all of their autoimmune conditions that they were suffering from. So I think you'll definitely want to tune into that, because it's a perfect example of using food as medicine and how we really are what we eat. So thanks for joining in, you guys. Tune in next week, spread the word, and I will make sure to do a few promotional posts so you guys all remember. And Brianne, Miss said, thank you for all the info. You are most certainly welcome. You guys have a good night and enjoy your week.